Now that you have completed your floor plan of your apartment, we're going to turn that into a scenic ground plan. The difference between a floor plan and a ground plan is very subtle. If there really is much difference at all, they're often used interchangeably. A floor plan is the cut view looking down on a specific space. A ground plan is the same thing, but what is relative about the ground plan is that it demonstrates how it fits to other things around it. So in a scenic ground plan, we know we're going to not only see the set itself, which represents a room in space for this production, but it'll show it in relationship to the theater and the audience and the other pieces around it. From our last experiences with scenic design, we talked about finding the actual research and hopefully finding the actual floor plans of a building that is historical and accurate to what you want it to be. So here is an example of floor plans for a brownstone in London, which is where I wanted this to be. I'm going to take the main ground floor plan on the left and use that to inspire my design for Dial M for Murder. If I pull that over and look at it, I can see that it has an entryway that comes up to a staircase, and on the main floor, we had a dining room on one side, a study, utility, kitchen at the back. And I understand that if they had taken an actual brownstone in London with this kind of a floor plan and turned it into apartments, they would have turned every floor into its own apartment. So they would have remodeled this floor to become one apartment. So what I decided to do was, first of all, make it into simpler block forms that make sense to me, but I still have the main door on the left for entry and a staircase that goes upstairs to the other apartments. And they've moved a wall down in the dining room to create a bedroom at the bottom and a grand room up in the center on the right, and the kitchen under the stairs. And then at back, there is a porch or stoop into the backyard. I'm going to have to decide now how I'm going to let an audience look into this. I have to remove a wall somewhere to get in, so I turned the plan sideways and decided to remove the left and downstage walls to allow them to look into the bedroom from both side angles and to look into this room through this wall, leaving the French doors on this side, the fireplace and doorway here into the bedroom, and then the kitchen would be seen only through the doorway when someone opened it, and the hallway would also only be seen as we opened it. Then what I decided was to vomit the set into the theater. That may sound like a strange word, but it comes from the old Greek term of vomitoriums. Vomitoriums are entryways that allow actors to spill right out onto the stage from under the audience. We have vomitoriums in the Marriott Center. As you're sitting in the stands, people can come out from underneath you in the corners out onto the floor. This makes the set feel like it's actually coming out and wrapping around the audience. An audience will still see the room as square, though there are no square angles left to the room because we've angled them all out. What it does is it allows an audience member sitting over here to see into the set and an audience member way over here to see into the set. Whereas if we kept it flat, an audience member over here would have looked at the outside of this wall and the audience over here would be looking at the outside of this wall. So if we splay open or vomit the set into the audience, it allows the audience in and makes them feel like they're part of the room. I also decided to carry the angle that I'm cutting this into a point out here and back over so that we get a sense that this may have been a corner of a room at one time, though we've removed this fourth wall. The other thing that I decided to do was to platform the upper part of the room one step higher than the lower part of the room. Now, this is for a couple of reasons. First of all, for sightline purposes. This allows someone to stand in this area and still be seen over the top of someone sitting here, which makes it easier for the audience to look at someone here and here at the same time. It also is a mindset that audiences kind of see this as an invisible wall, you might say, because if I have a couple of people speaking up here and one actor sitting down here, the audience will believe that this actor does not necessarily hear these actors because of the division of a step. Now, that's a psychological thing that is part of the jargon of looking at a set on stage. We believe that someone in this area may not necessarily hear someone in this area. It allows them to be two plane spaces separated from each other without putting a wall up that makes it hard for the audience to see through. I also decided to cut off the rest of this room because I really didn't need that bedroom to be as big as it was. We only had a segment where people walked in, did a small scene, and that was it. With that in mind, I fine-tuned this design into more of a set. Now I have the walls splayed out. I have divided the platforms out. I've now added thicknesses to the walls. I have designated where the doorways are. Here's the door open on all of these doorways. This was the kitchen, and this one was a full swing doorway. And here are the French doors going out onto the back porch. Next, I started placing furniture. By placing a sofa here, it actually helps to solidify the division of this step up and make it more obvious that maybe someone up here can't necessarily hear someone down here. One thing that we always want to do in a set is create what we call conversation groupings, or a place where actors can sit or stand and talk. So I placed an armchair next to the sofa so that people could sit on the sofa and someone else on a chair and have a conversation with each other. Notice that we often take furniture and splay it out also so that it faces the audience. It may have been better to have actually faced the chair and the sofa, but that's not a great angle for the audience to see. So by opening up this conversation, it allows the audience in more. I placed a coffee table so that people could set down glasses, books, paper, whatever else they needed to. I then placed a desk and chair up here in this area because this was kind of an office space area. And I placed a second chair over here, which is one that an actor could pick up and carry to any space on stage and help develop the conversation group. I often like to put single chairs around just so an actor can do that and help establish a conversation grouping somewhere. I next placed the fireplace on this wall. One thing we always do with a set is we always establish an actor also, so we see a relationship of the actor to the rest of the set. This helps the director get a feeling for proportions of what's going on. And then I had to start considering that there were 4 things that needed to happen in this room, and I, as the designer, could help action take place by placing these 4 objects in opposite sides of the room, so actors had to move back and forth between them. I needed to have, number 1, a telephone for someone to use. I needed to have, number 2, a radio that someone turned on. I needed to have, number 3, a pair of scissors that someone had to get from a sewing kit. And number 4, drinks that people had to mix when they were having conversations. So by placing those in 4 different corners of the set, that allowed me to create action for the actors and give them reasons to go to different parts of the set. First of all, I placed the telephone right on the desk, which makes sense because a desk is where a telephone probably would be in a room like this. And I could have placed the radio right next to it. I could have laid the scissors on there, and I could have had the bottles and glasses right there, but none of that would have established action. So instead, I then placed the end table over here, downstage right, where I sat the sewing basket with the scissors. And then I put a bookcase in this corner on which I placed the radio. And last, I placed a drink table upstage where bottles and glasses could be stored and drinks could be served. The last thing I did was add an umbrella stand next to the door because it was mentioned many times in the script that it was raining outside. This gave a place for people to hang coats, set umbrellas, and hang hats. Then I actually put a stove, a refrigerator, and a countertop in the kitchen so that when the door would swing open, the audience would look through the door and see elements of a kitchen back there and believe it was truly a kitchen. Then I placed furniture in the bedroom, a very shortened version of a bed, and a vanity where one of the actresses would actually sit and put on her makeup as part of the show. The next elements that I placed were triangles on 3 of the walls. We mentioned before when we were looking at floor plans of what a practical is. A practical is a light source that is on stage and actually lights up. I wanted 3 wall sconces hanging on the walls, so those were added, and I had a finished design. Then I placed that on the stage, knowing where I wanted it in the opening of the proscenium, checking all the sight lines to make sure it would work for the full production of the play. So, that is how you take a floor plan and turn it into a ground plan for theater.